Have you ever wondered why you keep attracting the same kind of love, even when it leaves you feeling drained, unseen, or broken? You tell yourself you want something different. You dream of a love that's real, mutual, and healing. But somehow, you find yourself in the same patterns, loving people who can't love you back, chasing validation, or settling for less than you deserve. This video isn't about blame. It's about understanding. It's about digging deep into the invisible forces that shape your relationships, your unconscious wounds, hidden beliefs, and the emotional blueprint you carry inside. Inspired by the profound insights of Carl Jung, we'll explore how love is not just a feeling, but a mirror, a reflection of your inner state, your unresolved pain, your level of self-awareness. And here's the truth. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will keep directing your love life, and you'll call it fate. By the end of this video, you'll gain clarity, not only about the kind of love you've been attracting, but why. You'll walk away with the power to break old cycles, reclaim your worth, and start attracting a love that reflects your healing, not your hurt. Stay with me. This may change how you see love forever. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. It's never just a coincidence when you find yourself falling for someone who doesn't choose you. It's not some strange fluke or bad luck that you repeatedly end up in relationships that leave you feeling hollow, unseen, and unworthy. There's something deeper going on, a pattern etched quietly into your emotional fabric, replaying itself until it's finally acknowledged. And here's the truth. Most people don't want to face that pattern can't be broken by simply finding a better partner. No external love can heal an internal wound, because love doesn't resolve your emptiness. It exposes it. Every person you've ever fallen for is more than just a chapter in your romantic story. They are symbols, living, breathing reflections of parts of yourself you may not even know exist. That cold, distant person who never responded to your emotional needs? They might be echoing your discomfort with vulnerability, your fear of opening up and being truly seen, that controlling partner? Perhaps they mirrored your desperate attempt to manage the chaos within your own heart. Even the one who seemed perfect, the one who swept you off your feet and later broke your trust, might have been reflecting the part of you that places others on pedestals, that gives everything away, that loses itself in love, still hoping to be chosen in return. This isn't punishment. It's not karma. And it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because the people we attract are often at the same emotional frequency as our unhealed parts. They speak the same emotional language, even when we don't realize it. They resonate with our pain, not our potential. Relationships aren't just connections. They're classrooms. They're sacred stages where the unconscious finally speaks, and it doesn't whisper, it roars. That's why, when a relationship rocks you to your core, don't just ask, "Why did they do this to me?" Ask the harder, more powerful questions. Why did I allow this? What part of me believed this was love? What wound inside me reached for this? It's so much easier to point fingers. It's easier to call them narcissistic, avoidant, toxic, and maybe some of that is true. But as long as you keep outsourcing the blame, you also give away your power to change. You stay trapped in the same loop, meeting different faces who bring the same heartbreak. The cast may change, the scenery may shift, but the emotional script stays agonizingly familiar. Because the love you haven't yet healed will keep knocking at your door in disguise until you finally understand what it came to teach you. Carl Jung understood this well. He saw every relationship as an initiatory path, not all meant to stay, but all meant to awaken something within. Some people show you your worth. Others show you the limits of what you still tolerate. Some lift you, others shatter you, only so you can rebuild with stronger hands. Even pain carries its wisdom. Even the storm has a voice. And what most people resist hearing is this, that behind every wild attraction, every obsessive romance, every love that left you breathless and broken, there is a message from your soul screaming to be acknowledged. Sometimes you're not clinging to a person because you truly love them. You're clinging because your wound remembers them. They're not your destiny. They're your mirror, not your savior, but a fragment of your shadow staring you down. But instead of facing that reflection, you romanticize it. You say, they're the one, when in truth, they're simply the one who most resembles the wound you haven't yet healed. You justify the red flags. You make excuses for the pain because it feels familiar. And what's familiar, even when it hurts, often feels safer than what's unknown. When someone triggers your deepest fears, don't run. Pause, observe, feel. If your body tightens, your heart races, and your mind spirals, those reactions aren't just about them. They're your story, speaking through your nervous system. And here's the paradox that will shift your life. The more deeply you come to know yourself, the more the love you attract begins to change. It's not because suddenly the universe sends you better people. It's because you stop resonating with the people who fed your brokenness. You stop confusing chaos with chemistry, anxiety with affection, and control with care. You begin to see clearly, perhaps for the first time. And more importantly, you begin to say no. You stop tolerating breadcrumbs when your soul is starving for bread. You stop chasing those who walk away. You start protecting your peace, not just your pride. But to get to that place, you must walk through the fire, the dark forest of self-awareness. You must stare into the mirror and see the parts of yourself that you once denied: the neediness, the shame, the anger, the fear. You must be brave enough to look back without playing the victim, to look inward without judgment, and to look ahead without illusion. Because real love, the kind that isn't rooted in need or desperation, isn't found. It's built, and it's built inside you. Only when you love your broken parts, truly love them, will you stop searching for someone else to rescue them. There's a quiet, invisible moment when your soul makes a choice about who to trust, who to love, who to let into the sacred space of your heart. But here's the wild truth. It's not your rational mind making that choice. It's the older, deeper part of you. The part that remembers every wound, every abandonment, every unmet need. The part that formed beliefs about love long before you ever fell in it. That's why Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. It's unsettling because it asks you to take responsibility for something we've been taught to surrender to chance. It reveals that what we call destiny in love is often just repetition, dressed up in roses. You may think you fell in love because of compatibility or chemistry, but many times we fall in love with what we lack, with what we fear, with the freedom we won't give ourselves, with the power we refuse to own, with the abandonment we already survived, hoping this time someone might stay, with the wound that still aches silently within us, begging to be seen. And maybe now, finally, it's time to see it. The person you're drawn to, the one you can't stop thinking about, the one who leaves you breathless, obsessed, or even in pain, rarely arrives by accident. They appear as a living symbol of something unresolved within you, something unfinished, something aching. What we so often call love isn't always love. It's a dance, a magnetic, invisible pull between two people who, consciously or not, are searching for the pieces they believe they've lost. A dance between two kinds of lack that recognize each other like mirrors in motion. Every look, every silence, every heated argument, or desperate reconciliation, it's all coded. Each one has an emotional meaning written in the language of wounds we haven't yet translated. You feel drawn to their confidence, not because of who they are, but because deep inside, you're unsure of your worth. You admire their independence because you keep abandoning yourself just to feel needed. And their distance, that subtle, painful absence, it pulls at you with unbearable force because somewhere along the line, you were taught that love isn't received freely, but earned, fought for, begged for. Some people enter your life with such perfect timing that it feels divine. It feels like destiny, like they've known you forever, like they were made for you. These are the ones who read your soul without you saying a word, who spark emotions you didn't know you had. They become oxygen to your breath, a kind of emotional necessity. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. But here's the sobering truth. Intensity isn't always love. Sometimes it's just trauma, cleverly dressed in romantic longing. Sometimes it's your nervous system, identifying a pattern it's known for years, unpredictable love, hot and cold attention, fear tangled with desire. It feels like home, but only because pain, for you, has been home. That's the cruel paradox. What's familiar, even when it breaks you, can feel safer than what's healthy. Because deep down, you're not searching for another person. You're searching for an emotional experience your body was trained to chase. If love used to mean being ignored, you'll crave validation. If love used to be unstable, you'll run toward chaos. If love once hurt, you'll cling to the one who wounds you most. And the scariest part? You won't even realize you're doing it because it's not your conscious mind choosing. It's your story. And this is why inner work is not optional. It's essential. This is not about avoiding love or closing your heart. It's about finally recognizing which part of you is choosing who you give your love. Is it your adult self, the part of you that knows your value, that respects yourself deeply, that's aware of what you deserve? Or is it the wounded child still hiding inside? The one who waits to be seen, to be picked, to be rescued? Because when it's the child's choosing, love becomes a plea. A desperate reaching out for someone to fix what was broken long ago. But when the adult chooses love, becomes a choice. A peaceful, steady yes to someone who doesn't complete you, but walks beside you as you both continue your becoming. To get to that place of healthy, conscious love, you have to strip yourself bare. You have to remove every mask you've worn to feel worthy. You must confront your attachments with brutal, unflinching honesty. You must accept that sometimes the other person wasn't cruel, you just put them on a pedestal they never asked for. You imagined their potential instead of seeing their truth. You ignored the red flags because they reminded you of a love you hoped would be different this time. You accepted crumbs and called it devotion. You confused attention with affection. You settled, not because you didn't want more, but because you didn't believe you could have it. And as painful as that realization is, it's also the beginning of your liberation, because the moment you own your part in the story is the moment you take your power back. You stop seeing love as something that just happens to you. You start seeing it as something you help create, allow, and shape. And that changes everything. It changes the kinds of conversations you're willing to have. It changes the boundaries you set. It changes how you look at the people who enter your life, and more importantly, how you look at yourself. You no longer crave constant validation. You no longer need someone to fix what's broken inside. You become a stable, emotional space, a home for your own heart. And from that place of wholeness, love is no longer a roller coaster, it becomes a bridge. A bridge between two conscious beings, not clinging to survive, but choosing to walk together. That doesn't make love any less powerful. It makes it more real, more honest, more human. Because it no longer grows from fear, it grows from encounter. From mutual recognition between two people who don't need each other, but want each other. Who see clearly and still choose to stay. And this shift only happens when you stop attracting from your wounds and start radiating from your healing. The quality of love you receive is directly tied to the quality of love you give yourself, your self-respect, your emotional boundaries, your ability to be alone without feeling empty. That's what love responds to. That's what determines who enters your life and how they treat you. Jung understood this with haunting clarity. Love isn't blind, it's revealing. It doesn't come to fill your gaps, it comes to illuminate them. It doesn't hand you easy answers, it forces you to face the questions you've avoided your entire life. And if you're brave enough to face them, if you're willing to sit in the discomfort, to look inward instead of outward, you'll begin to attract a love that reflects your healing, not your hurt. A love that grows in truth, not fantasy. A love that feels like peace, not a storm. And that is the kind of love that lasts. And that's precisely the point where most people run. Not physically, but emotionally and spiritually. They retreat the moment love demands something more than fantasy. Because loving consciously requires a level of emotional maturity that many aren't ready to face. It demands that we release the illusion that someone else will come and complete us, as if we were broken puzzles waiting for a missing piece. It demands that we grow up emotionally, that we set aside the fairy tales we were fed, and instead face a more profound and liberating truth. True love begins where need ends. Only when you can hold yourself, your darkness, and your light, your pain, and your power, your flaws, and your gifts in your full, unfiltered entirety. Only then can you open your heart to a love that doesn't replay your emptiness, but expands your soul. Not a love that fills a hole, but one that builds a bridge. Sometimes we like to believe that love is pure luck, a chance encounter, a magical twist of fate. It's easier that way, but Jung calls us to look deeper. He invites us to shed the comforting illusions and recognize something far more uncomfortable, yet transformative. The love you attract is not a reflection of what you want, but a mirror of who you are. And that's where it gets raw. That's where it gets real. Because if the love you find is dishonest, distant, abusive, or emotionally unavailable, what is it reflecting on you? Not as a punishment, not as blame, but as awareness. Because no one ever consciously chooses to be hurt. But the painful truth is that many of us unconsciously choose people who already know how to do it because that kind of pain feels familiar. It fits a pattern we've unconsciously accepted as normal. And as much as we may hate to admit it, that repetition has become a part of our emotional identity. When you slow down, when you begin to observe the threads that run through your relationships, something stunning starts to happen. You notice the echoes, the same emotional dynamics with different faces, in different settings, but always returning to that same aching place between longing and pain. And right there in that invisible but deeply felt space is the truth of what you're attracting. Because we don't attract what we wish for, we attract what we believe we deserve. Even if that belief is buried so deep, we can't even name it. You attract based on the energy you carry when no one's watching, on how you speak to yourself, in the silence of your mind, on what you do with your loneliness, on how you hold yourself in your emptiness, on your level of self-acceptance. That is what love responds to. The people you draw in are not reacting to your potential, your prettiest photos, or your social mask. They're responding to the unspoken signals you emit. And when you don't know yourself, when you haven't learned how to protect your energy, you become a magnet for love that doesn't serve you. This is the key that changes everything. The love you attract reveals your level of self-knowledge. It's not about how intelligent you are. It's not about how beautiful, successful, or even how kind. It's about your emotional frequency, your vibration. It's about what your unconscious mind permits, normalizes, and believes is possible for you. It's about the unspoken stories you still carry, ones you may have never dared to say out loud. So, love isn't just a relationship. It's a revelation. A mirror that life holds up to you not to shame you, but to show you your edges. The other person becomes the stage, and your soul steps out with all its unhealed parts. That's why we love with fear, with urgency, with dependency, not because we're weak, but because we've mistaken emotional survival for connection. We don't love from fullness, we love from lack. We look for someone to seal the wound we can't name, to soothe the ache we've buried, to love the version of us. We don't even love ourselves. But here's a truth that shatters illusions. Love cannot heal what you're not willing to look at. It can't. At best, it will shake you. It will show you. It will expose you. And then you will have a choice. Will you use the mirror, or will you break it again? There's a widely accepted myth that love justifies everything. That if it hurts, it must be deep. That if it consumes you, it must be real. But Jung challenges this illusion, because to him, real love doesn't destroy you. It integrates you. It doesn't leave you in ruins. It pulls you toward wholeness. And wholeness is not just your joy, your confidence, or your kindness. It's your jealousy, your fear, your need for control, your insecurity, your shadow. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. True love brings all of that to the surface, not to shame you, but to heal you. And that's not a tragedy. That's a divine invitation, an opportunity to turn the unconscious into the conscious, to walk through your relationships not like a battlefield or a hiding place, but as a school for your soul. Because love isn't meant to numb you. It's meant to awaken you. But facing this truth requires something rare courage. Not the kind that shows up in grand gestures or romantic declarations, but the quiet, soul-deep courage to look in the mirror and not look away. Because once you realize that the love you attract isn't just some random twist of fate, but a reflection of your inner world, you can no longer keep blaming the other. You can no longer keep pointing outward when the call has always been coming from within. You have to stop. You have to pause and sit in the silence of your truth and ask, what part of me chose to stay in a place where I was never truly seen? What part of me felt oddly safe in absence, in indifference, in emotional starvation? What part of me believed, perhaps for years, that I didn't deserve more? These aren't comfortable questions. They're raw. They sting. They pull at the very fibers of your being. But they're necessary, because the answers you're searching for, the healing, the clarity, the freedom, they aren't out there. They never were. And until you're willing to dive into those dark, forgotten places within yourself, you'll keep attracting the same kind of love. The faces will change. The names will change. The promises will be different. But the emotional pattern, the script, that haunting melody of unworthiness, it will repeat. Over and over, like a song you never chose, but learned to sing anyway. Only you can rewrite that song, not with surface-level affirmations or trendy self-help jargon, but through deep, soul-searching work. The kind of work that walks you back to your childhood. From the first time you were told you were too much. For the first time, love was withheld unless you performed, behaved, or dimmed your light. To the bonds that shaped your idea of love before you even knew how to spell the word. That's where the pattern began. That's the root. And until you return to that origin and hold it with compassion, not judgment, you'll keep reliving it. Even in brand new relationships, you'll keep replaying that same melody, even if you try to change the song, because the love you attract isn't a coincidence. It's a message, a letter your unconscious wrote and mailed out into the universe. And every time you connect with someone, every crush, every heartbreak, every intense pull, you're revealing something about yourself, something sacred, something wounded, something you didn't want to look at, but desperately need to love. Because no one on this earth can give you love you keep denying yourself. No one can respect you if you keep placing yourself where respect can't reach. No one can save you from the very pain you refuse to walk away from. Love isn't magic. It's a revelation. It's a mirror, but not a harsh, cruel one, a precise, honest one. And once you begin to look at yourself without fear, the reflection stops showing lack. It starts showing presence, truth. You begin to see yourself not through the eyes of abandonment or rejection, but through the quiet dignity of self-awareness. There's something almost sacred in witnessing how someone loves when they're not trying to impress you, when the flirtation has faded, when the performance ends, when all that remains is the raw, unpolished truth of who they are and how they hold love. That is where the soul is revealed, right there where love is no longer a promise, but an action, where it's not dressed up in roses or grand gestures, but in presence, consistency, respect, right? There is where the true emotional structure of a person becomes visible. Jung understood this with clarity and depth. He knew that there is no more powerful way to know someone's soul than to observe how they sustain love, because love isn't just about who you choose, it's about how you love, where you love from, and what you're willing to face within yourself truly holds another. So many people use love as an escape, a way to avoid the gnawing emptiness, the quiet insecurity, the aching voice that whispers, "You're not enough." And so they don't love the person in front of them, they love the fantasy, the projection, the idea of salvation. They turn the other person into a savior, a hero, a healer of all things broken. But Jung warned us of this illusion, because when you love someone not for who they are, but for what they represent, you're not loving, you're using. And though society may romanticize that kind of connection, it always ends the same way, in disillusionment, because no human being can carry the burden of being someone else's redemption. Here's another uncomfortable truth. The love you attract has less to do with what you say you want and everything to do with what your unconscious is trying to resolve. You call in people who match your unhealed wounds, who unknowingly fit the emotional mold you've carried for years. And that's why you might feel drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, not because you're broken, but because on some level, you've learned to protect yourself by staying emotionally distant too. Or maybe you keep falling for people who won't choose you because deep down, you haven't fully chosen yourself either. Love becomes a battlefield, a place where your deepest desires collide with your oldest traumas, where your need for closeness crashes against your fear of losing control. But when someone is at peace with themselves, their love changes. They don't need constant reassurance. They don't cling, manipulate, or try to own. They don't chase love to survive, it flows from their wholeness. They love freedom, not from fear. They're not looking for another half to complete them. They are already whole, and from that wholeness, they choose to share the journey. And that's why inner work is everything. Because the more you heal, the more the type of love you attract changes. You stop searching for broken mirrors to reflect your pain. You start resonating with those who are unafraid to show their shadows because they've met them too. Healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes you think you've done the work until you're triggered again, until you fall back into old patterns and wonder if you've made any progress at all. But that's okay. The unconscious mind doesn't give up its secrets easily. It hides. It tests. It waits for you to be ready. And every relationship, yes, even the painful ones, is an opportunity to see more clearly, to ask, what am I seeking in the other? And what have I not yet given to myself? Because the most dangerous kind of love is the one rooted in hope. The hope that someone else will fix what you haven't yet dared to face. That kind of love feels beautiful, but it's built on borrowed strength. It turns love into a debt, and debts are heavy. You owe them your healing. They owe you their salvation. But is love born from debt? That's not love. That's survival. Jung spoke of individuation, the journey toward wholeness, the brave act of reconciling every part of yourself, the beautiful, the messy, the sacred, the hidden. And in that process, love becomes essential. Not because it's the goal, but because it's the terrain. It's the soil where your unintegrated parts rise to the surface and demand your attention. And when you're willing to walk through that terrain, love is no longer something that happens to you, it's something that awakens you. Loving someone truly loving requires a kind of courage that not everyone is ready for. Because real love strips you bare. It tears down your walls, peels back your armor, and asks you to be seen not just in your strength or your light, but in your chaos. It invites you into a sacred kind of emotional nakedness, where you can no longer hide behind perfection, control, or charm. And in that exposed state, everything you haven't yet healed will rise. Your fears, your insecurities, your old wounds, they all float to the surface, waiting to be felt, named, and hopefully embraced. This is why, whether they admit it or not, many people run from love. Not because they're cold, not because they don't want it, but because love, real love, demands that you face yourself. And that is terrifying, because the moment you open your heart, you're no longer presenting your polished self, you're revealing your soul. Not your ego, not your mask, not the version you curated for approval, but the raw, trembling truth of who you are underneath. That's why analyzing the kind of love you attract is one of the most profound acts of self-awareness you can engage in. Because the people who draw you in, the bonds that shake you, the patterns that keep repeating, they are mirrors, honest ones. And sometimes, what they reflect can feel brutal, but it can also free you, because it reveals what's been quietly living inside you all along. It confronts you with your limitations, your contradictions, the subtle hidden ways you betray yourself for affection. But more importantly, it gives you a choice, a sacred, life-altering opportunity to choose differently, to heal, to break the cycle. Because once you see the pattern, really see it, you can't unsee it. You can no longer pretend you're just unlucky in love. You can no longer fool yourself into thinking it's always about them. No, you now carry the truth. And that truth gives you power, even if it doesn't yet give you courage. But courage, like love, can grow. This is the point where love stops being random and becomes a conscious act. You don't love out of hunger anymore. You love from abundance. You don't choose from desperation. You choose from clarity. You don't attract to fill a void. You invite someone in to share the fullness of who you are. But to get to that sacred ground, you must walk through fire. The fire of self-inquiry, the fire of accountability, the fire of humility. You must be brave enough to admit that you've hurt too, that you've chosen people who didn't choose you, that you stayed when your soul was begging you to leave, that you allowed more than you deserved, not because you were weak, but because you didn't yet know your worth. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Because here's the truth, the love you attract isn't just a story you write with another person. It's the silent language your soul uses to speak to you. It's easy to say, we deserve a great love, a conscious, deep, committed love. We repeat it like a mantra. We write it in journals. We visualize it like a dream on the horizon. But Jung would ask us something far more unsettling. Not what kind of love you want, but what kind of love you're truly capable of sustaining. Because attracting love is only the beginning. The real test is holding it, sitting with what it awakens in you, not running the moment it touches a wound you buried long ago, not sabotaging it the moment it asks you to grow. Because what so many call true love is often just a shared projection. Two people unconsciously reenacting their unmet needs, trying to make the other responsible for their pain. And though the connection may feel intoxicating, what it is survival. It's trauma in disguise. It's lack meeting lack and calling it love. Jung explained this through the concepts of the anima and animus, internal representations of the feminine and masculine sides of our psyche. When you meet someone who activates that archetype, the pull is undeniable. It feels magical, destined, otherworldly. But what you're seeing isn't them. You're seeing a part of yourself projected onto them. You fall in love with an image, an ideal, a fantasy built from the deepest parts of your longing. And when that illusion inevitably crumbles, as illusions always do, it's devastating. Not because you've lost them, but because you're forced to face the loss of the story you built around them. The one that told you they would be everything, that they would save you, that they would finally make it all make sense. What hurts most isn't their departure. It's the grief of having to face what they helped you avoid, your loneliness, your fear, your sense of unworthiness. Jung said it best, what you do not make conscious will appear in your life as fate. And in love, fate often shows up as repetition. Different faces, different names, same pain, same wound, until you decide once and for all to look inward, to ask the hard questions, to stop outsourcing your healing to others. Stop hoping someone will rescue you from the parts of yourself you haven't yet learned to hold. Because the love you attract after you begin to heal, after you begin to awaken, is different. It's not based on grand promises or inflated expectations. It's not fueled by the desire to be saved. It's rooted in the quiet, knowing that you are already whole. You no longer chase someone to complete you because you've stopped believing that you were ever incomplete. You no longer crave a rescuer because you've become your own. And from that state of inner abundance, your energy shifts profoundly. And with it, the type of love that finds you begins to shift too. You attract peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, presence instead of performance. And yet, even this love, the one that is balanced, honest, and rooted in truth, can feel uncomfortable. Because when all you've ever known is drama, manipulation, emotional hunger, peace feels like emptiness, stability feels like boredom, maturity feels like a lack of excitement. And that's why so many people sabotage the very kind of love they claim to want, because it doesn't activate their alarm systems. It doesn't make them chase. It doesn't make them bleed to feel alive. But as Jung taught us, what is familiar, even if it hurts, often feels safer than the unknown. And so the work isn't just about healing what's broken. It's also about learning to receive love without fear. And when you see someone who has truly done this inner work, you'll know. They don't chase. They don't run. They don't project. They love with both feet on the ground and their soul wide open. They don't ask you to fill their emptiness. They invite you to walk beside them in truth. They understand that love isn't about completion. It's about connection, not between two broken halves, but between two whole, self-aware souls who choose to meet again and again. That's the kind of love worth waiting for. And more importantly, worth becoming. They understand something many never do, that love doesn't need to be perfect to be profound. It doesn't need to be flawless to be beautiful. In its sefton, the imperfections, the awkward silences, the small missteps, and the raw vulnerability that make love real. When there's awareness, genuine awareness, even the mess becomes sacred. They no longer try to mold or change the other to fit their expectations, nor do they bend and contort themselves until they lose their essence. Instead, they seek something so rare yet so necessary: balance. They find a sacred middle ground between I and we, between individuality and intimacy. And from that space where honesty lives, they begin to build, not quickly, not recklessly, but with patience, with truth, and with humanity. And it's in that place where love finally transforms. It stops being an obsession, a chase, a desperate need to be chosen. It becomes a choice, a conscious, grounded, daily decision to stay, not because it's perfect, not because it's always easy, but because it's true. You choose the other, but you also choose yourself. You stay rooted in your truth, your worth, and your own identity. And that kind of love, the one that honors freedom, rather than fearing it, that's the deepest love of all. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. It can only blossom when you no longer live from that gripping fear of being abandoned, of being too much or not enough, of ending up alone, because you've made peace with solitude. You've come to realize that the love you attract will always reflect the love you hold for yourself. And while that relationship with yourself is invisible to the world, it speaks volumes. It shapes everything: how you speak, how you set boundaries, how you receive or reject love. There's no perfect formula for this. No 7 steps and no magic date on the calendar when everything clicks. It's not linear. It's deeply personal, fiercely intimate, and yes, often solitary. But every time you look at yourself with raw honesty, every time you face a memory you buried, every time you extend grace to a part of yourself you used to shame, you move closer to the possibility of loving from a place that is real. And then, when your heart is quiet and you're no longer searching through desperation, someone appears. Not to save you, not to rescue you from your pain, but to walk beside you, not as the prize, but as a companion. Not as a fantasy, but as a mirror. And their love doesn't shout or dazzle. It simply is. It transforms, not by what it gives you, but by what it awakens within you. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when you finally realize the love you've been attracting all along was never a coincidence. That moment doesn't always arrive peacefully. Sometimes it crashes in like a storm, an emotional collapse, a breakup you never saw coming, a relationship you clung to that slowly unraveled, a pattern you repeated, and you're left asking, why? That's when the mirror shatters, and in the broken pieces, you begin to see the truth behind your choices. Jung, with his deep understanding of the human psyche, said it clearly: we do not attract what we want, we attract what we are. And that realization can shake you, because it asks you to look exactly where you've been avoiding inside. Because behind every love that failed to hold you, every bond that made you shrink, every time you gave until you were empty, there is a story you've never told. A story not about others, but about you. The child who was overlooked, the teenager who stayed quiet to avoid rejection, the adult still scanning rooms for approval, still waiting to be chosen by someone, anyone. And when that inner story remains buried in your unconscious, it doesn't disappear. It leaks. It manifests in the people you draw in, especially the ones who awaken something primitive, something urgent, something unexplainable. But here's the truth. That fiery pull isn't always love. Sometimes it's a wound asking to be seen, a trauma disguised as passion. Jung taught that relationships are not just emotional playgrounds, they are spiritual stages, places where your soul reveals itself, confronts itself, and reflects itself. And true intimacy? It will confront you. It will unearth your jealousy. It will surface your fear of abandonment. It will crack open your need to control or be controlled. And if you're not willing to face those shadows, they'll rule you. You'll repeat the same love stories over and over again until you're brave enough to see them for what they are. So you begin to ask the harder questions. Why do I always fall for unavailable people? Why do I give everything to those who never give back? Why is it so difficult to hold a healthy love? And the answers, more often than not, are not found in the outside world. They live in the corners of your psyche, where old beliefs still whisper, love must be earned. Love always hurts. Love only comes when you sacrifice your truth. Maybe you learn to equate passion with chaos. Maybe you confused distance with desire. Maybe you thought coldness was just another form of mystery. And those beliefs, though unseen, shape your life like an invisible script. The hardest part isn't finding someone who loves you well, The hardest part is believing you deserve to be loved like that. Because when you haven't done the inner work, healthy love can feel foreign. It can feel boring even. And without knowing why, you might reject it, sabotage it, run from it. Because your emotional system doesn't know what to do with love that isn't built on lack. Jung said something we don't hear enough. The soul needs conflict to grow. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 5 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. And it's in that sacred tension between who you've been and who you're becoming where transformation blooms. But no one else can walk that path for you. No book, no video, no relationship. Eventually, it's just you alone with your reflection, asking the questions that matter. What am I looking for in the other? Is it love or an escape? Is it connection or ego validation? Is it company or just a way to not feel alone? The answers won't come all at once. They'll come in fragments, in memories you thought you forgot, in quiet tears, in soft epiphanies. But they will come, and when they do, you'll begin to see clearly. You'll stop searching for love to save you, and start recognizing love as something to share. Not because you need to be seen, but because you see yourself now, and that changes everything. How you choose, what you tolerate, what you give, what you allow. And yes, at first it may feel lonely, because when you start healing, you no longer fit into relationships that are rooted in pain. But that loneliness, it's not punishment. It's cleansing. It's making room for something real to grow. And when that kind of love arrives, it won't be perfect. It won't be a fairy tale. It won't erase your past or fill every void. But it will walk beside you. It will honor you. And it will invite you to rise. It will invite you gently yet undeniably to walk through love with awareness, not autopilot. To share from a place of wholeness, not desperation. Stop treating the other as a puzzle piece to your incompleteness, and instead witness them as a whole, complex soul of their own. And you'll come to understand something that shifts everything. It's not just about who shows up in your life, it's about how you show up in the bond. Not from lack, but from presence. Not to be saved, but to celebrate the encounter. At that level, love isn't a performance, a show of grand gestures and emotional theatrics. It's a sanctuary of depth, of tenderness, of courage. It's the ability to hold the other without losing your grip on yourself. And that's something you can only do when you're no longer acting out old stories, when you stop running the script of fear, abandonment, or inadequacy, and instead begin to choose love with your soul wide awake. Because the love you attract will always mirror something inside you. The question is, are you ready to see what it reflects? When Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious," he wasn't only talking about healing your past wounds. He was speaking of love too. Because love doesn't grow on the polished surface of your public self. It blooms in the shadows, in the unspoken, in the parts of you were told to hide. And that's where you begin to meet yourself. That's where you discover who you are through the kind of love you've welcomed, tolerated, chased, or crumbled under. Maybe you've loved someone with a kind of madness you still can't explain. Maybe you gave every inch of yourself, down to the bone, even the parts you should have kept. Maybe you stayed longer than you should have, forgave what broke you, justified what drained you, and dreamed until the dream broke you open. And now, looking back, you barely recognize the version of you who let it all happen. But Jung's wisdom offers a lifeline, that every relationship, no matter how heartbreaking, is a mirror of the relationship you hold with yourself. It's not about blaming, it's about seeing clearly. What part of me mistook that pain for love? So many of us walk around with a wound that silently begs, "Please love me in the way I was never loved." That wound becomes a compass. It draws us over and over again to what feels familiar, even when that familiarity hurts. We chase those who reject us. We fantasize about those who never truly saw us. We ache for those who were never meant to stay. Because deep down, we're still trying to rewrite a childhood ending that left us feeling unseen. We keep hoping that this time will be different. But it won't be. Not until you understand something fundamental. They didn't come to complete you. They came to expose where you've abandoned yourself. And that's the hidden grace of love. It reveals. It uncovers. It teaches in ways comfort never could. Even the painful bonds leave wisdom behind if you're willing to face it. Why am I drawn to the emotionally unavailable? Why do I lose myself in people who never really choose me? Why does healthy love make me want to run? These questions are not meant to shame you. They're meant to awaken you. Because once you wake up, you'll stop looking for someone to rescue you from your loneliness. You'll meet love when you've finally made peace with being with yourself. As long as you keep avoiding your truth, your silence, your sadness, your real needs, you'll keep attracting love that mirrors your own inner belief. That you're not enough. That you have to earn love. That settling is the best you can do. But that's not love. That's an illusion. Authentic love has no space in illusion. It only exists in presence. Jung said, "What you do not make conscious will manifest in your life as fate." And in the arena of love, that unconscious fate becomes a loop, attraction, euphoria, disappointment, emptiness, again and again, until you finally stop, until you stop blaming the world and start looking within. That's where everything begins. Because when you heal, your frequency shifts, your self-worth stabilizes, your boundaries sharpen, and the people who show up in your life begin to look different. You no longer attract from starvation, you attract from abundance. And yes, it feels different. It may look unfamiliar, but it's real. It's not instant magic. It's not a fairy tale. It's a journey. There will be nights of the soul, moments where you feel lost, relapses into old patterns, tears over people you thought you had let go of. But that's part of the process, because you cannot love another deeply until you've dared to face your abyss. You can't hold another soul with tenderness until you've held yourself through your pain. You can't say, "I choose you in freedom," if you haven't first chosen yourself in both your light and your darkness. And when that day comes, you won't need love to be perfect. You'll only need it to be honest, reciprocal, and safe enough for you to show up without the masks you once wore to be loved. Because love isn't a stage. It's not a role you perform. It's a sacred place, a temple where two humans can truly see and be seen. The most revealing thing about love isn't what the other does or doesn't do. It's what you feel rising in you, what it activates, what it confronts, what it awakens. Love, when entered consciously, becomes a doorway to the deepest rooms of your soul. And if you dare to walk through it with eyes wide open, you'll realize something extraordinary. Every relationship has been a message. Every love has been a teacher. Every heartbreak, a sacred mirror. Some revealed your darkness. Others reflected your light. But all of them brought you closer to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point of it all. Because in the end, it's not about how many people have loved you. It's about how many times you've chosen to return to yourself after being broken. How many times you've chosen not to shut down. How many times you've chosen to keep your heart open without losing you in the process. That kind of love doesn't arrive by accident. It arrives when you're ready to live in truth. When you stop chasing fantasy and start living in alignment. The love you attract is never random. It's the echo of your frequency. It's the language of your inner world made visible. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 6 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. It shows who you are now, but it also points to who you're becoming. When you say yes to that growth, to the raw, messy, beautiful unfolding of your truth, love begins to shift. Not just romantic love, but the love you hold for yourself. And that changes everything. The questions that make you uncomfortable, they're sacred, they crack you open. And when you ask them with trembling hands and a soft, honest heart, you begin to evolve. That's the real alchemy of love. Not the butterflies or fairy tales, but the quiet courage to turn heartbreak into healing, confusion into clarity, and longing into wisdom. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering with new eyes. It's about whispering thank you to the ones who broke you, because they showed you where you still needed to heal. It's forgiving yourself for staying too long, for loving too hard, for dimming your light, and finally realizing you were never unworthy of love. You just didn't know how worthy you already were. So when someone doesn't choose, you don't collapse. Rise. When all you're left with is your reflection, don't run. Sit with it. Because of that reflection, that's not failure. That's freedom. You are not here to be completed. You are already whole. You are made of stars, fire, and sacredness. And when you know that when you truly honor your scars, your softness, your strength, the universe responds. A new kind of love begins to find you. One that meets you in truth, not fantasy. One that doesn't fix you, but sees you. One that walks beside you, not ahead or behind. Because you've done the work. You've met yourself in the dark and carried yourself back into the light. And now, you are ready. Not for crumbs, not for confusion, but for a love that feels like home. Not because it hurts, but because it finally doesn't. This isn't the end. This is your beginning. Take a moment to breathe. If you've stayed with me through this entire video, then I know deep down you're not here for surface-level answers. You're here because you feel this. Because something inside you stirred with every truth, every mirror, every ache wrapped in wisdom. You're here because you're ready. Ready to see, to feel, to grow, and to stop living on emotional autopilot. So now, I ask you, what truth hit home for you the most? What pattern? What insight? What buried belief rose to the surface and refused to be ignored? Tell me in the comments below, what is one thing you learned from this video that you will begin practicing in your life starting today? Whether it's choosing yourself first, healing your inner child, or no longer chasing love that hurts. Your comment might be the mirror someone else needs to begin their own journey too. Drop your answer below. If you've made it this far, comment the number 6 to let me know you're still watching with me. I see you, I honor you, and I thank you. And finally, if this video touched something deep in you, if it gave voice to emotions you didn't have words for, please let it ripple outward. Like this video, if it resonated. Share it with someone who needs this message. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another moment of truth, healing, and self-discovery. This isn't the end, my friend. This is the beginning of a new kind of love story, one that starts with you, with love. Until next time.